Hi, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm so excited to have you on the show, lady.
Yeah, I'm finally so excited to get to chat with you face to face.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you guys. Jocelyn and I have been internet buddies for a few years now, I'd
Yeah.
say. And finally, this is our first time actually seeing each other, which is wonderful. So, this has been a long time coming, but I would love to hear from you just a little bit more about yourself. If you'd like to introduce yourself, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Jocelyn Montemarano. I am a journalist turned case study and content consultant. So I support service providers, agency owners, and coaches with telling client stories that increase their conversions and kind of really like leveraging all of that juicy client data, the results, all of that to build credibility and build trust with your audience as well. So you can get more right fit clients who are actually in a position to succeed in your offer.
Yes, and oh my gosh, the work that you're doing is so great, and, as storytelling nerds on this podcast, I'm so excited to talk to you about this, especially because I love storytelling aspects of things, but I'm not always great at statistics and data and then turning that into a story, which is what you do,
Mhm.
so, this is gonna be such a good combo, but before we dive into all the juicy tips, I do like to kick off the conversations by just asking, what has your journey in entrepreneurship looked like? How have you gotten to where you are today?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster. I feel like that's probably how everybody starts this answer. I initially started my journey like back in like 2016 when it was all of the big name creators. So it was listening to Amy Porterfield and
Mhm.
Jenna Kutcher and Melissa Griffin every day on the way to my corporate job and, trying to figure out what my business would be. And then I really kind of started to take the transition by moving out of corporate and starting to work for another coach in her business as a full-time content and program director. So I was in charge of all of the content across her blog, her YouTube, her Instagram, email list, all of that, as well as supporting with designing the actual program and curriculum and webinar and just the entire start to finish of that like journey. And then I transitioned into my own thing. And I originally started with a podcast agency, kind of supporting people on that side of things because it made so much sense to me coming from that full-time role and being great. All I need is for clients to give me, 4 really, really solid pieces of thought leadership content a month, and I can do so much with that and, turn it into videos, turn it into social clips, turn it into emails and everything like that. So I was doing that, and then ultimately through my own, this is gonna get a little bit meta here, but through my own case study collection system that I was using inside of my podcast agency to track my clients' results, understand the progress they were making and things like that. I noticed a very prominent like pattern of no matter what industry they were in, what their niche was, how big their podcast was, case study interviews were the highest converting for all of them. And I was like, "Oh, that's really interesting." And I had made all of my clients include case study interviews as part of their podcast strategy because I had done that in the past and I was just like, "Oh, I know case studies are really helpful for so many things. So let's just include them." So I crafted their interview questions for their case study episodes and things like that. And then after seeing it convert, I was like, "Oh, I bet I have people in my audience who, aren't my podcast client, but would love support on this case study stuff." So I put out an offer, just the very V1 version to kind of see if anybody would be interested in it. And within 7 days, I had my first client into that offer. And now it's just evolved and grown and everything. So now that's my main focus because it was such a faster and easier path for both me and clients to increase the results and have that without so much. Because like a true podcast, like done well, like Feel Good Social is not, just a light thing. It is a commitment on both me as the agency owner and on the client. So I decided to like lean fully into the case study side of things. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's like the high level snapshot of how I got here.
I love that question so much just because it's so interesting to me to hear how people's journeys and businesses evolve over time, and I love how you kind of kept, getting curious about different things and then realizing, "Oh, this is kind of the tug that I'm feeling pulled toward. This is what's working. This is what people need. Let's go over here." And I also don't think that, sometimes as new entrepreneurs, we're told you gotta niche down, but I don't know. I don't know if you ever felt this way, but a lot of times people are niche down by industry, niche down by podcasting or
Mm,
all the different industries. But very quickly, I kind of realized I don't know if I can niche down by industry or what other ways can we niche down. And so I love that you're giving us this kind of opportunity to think about niching down in different perspectives
yeah.
and stuff. So
Yeah.
cool.
It's more niching down on like the skill, right? That,
Mhm.
I'm supporting my clients with. It went from podcast, which has a lot of different skills like within it, to really niching down on client stories and case studies and kind of using that data. So, but you've done the same thing too with, authentic AI for entrepreneurs, because that's like really niche down on, you know, specifically using AI as opposed to, a whole umbrella thing and AI is a piece of it. So you've done a really great job with
All the
that.
things. Oh, yeah, we're figuring it out, but oh my gosh, okay, let's talk about case studies because this is truly one of the things I mean, you know this, but I think it's so undervalued, I think, a lot of times, or it's kind of this concept that not a lot of people understand what it is and stuff. So, can you just give us an overview of kind of what does a case study look like and also who should use case studies specifically in their business?
Yeah. So I definitely recommend all service providers, agency owners, any type of coach have case studies. And case studies to me, like I first want to just like 101 define it. Does not have to be this long, dense like PDF. Like back
Mhm.
in the day, it used to be that. And that's not what it is anymore. I literally teach my clients how to create case studies for any format. We start with email just because that's typically the closest point to the sale. But we go over sales page, we go over social content, we go over interviews for, your YouTube channel or your podcast or blog. So there's so many different ways that like the format wise it can take shape, and it's definitely not like a crusty PDF like
Mhm.
back in the day it used to be. But yeah, case studies are really about telling the stories of your successful clients in a very specific way that's designed to overcome the objections, fears, and hesitations that your potential clients have to joining your offer. So, as experts, like we are helping clients with, you know, big transformations in their life or their business, whether that's like a new website redesign or, relationship coaching and helping a marriage, like these are very meaningful things in people's lives. And they often are like a four-figure investment in most cases for many service providers and coaches. And we want to invest in things that we feel really confident that we can actually get the outcome of that service or of that program and like have success with it. But we have so many thoughts just naturally being human as to why it wouldn't work for us. We could literally see you have 200 testimonials and you've worked with hundreds of clients, and we would still be like, yeah, but will it work for me? Right. So we
Mhm.
have to craft those very specific case study stories where your potential clients can really see, oh, I see people just like me who started at the same point or were in a similar situation or had a similar background or whatever it might be. If they were able to have success in this offer, I'm very likely could too because I see it's designed for people like me.
Yeah. Oh, man. I know it is really, really interesting. I have totally been there where I'm just like, you see people being like, "Yes, this is great. Yes, I recommend it." And I'm like, "Ugh, but they don't get me." You know?
Yeah.
But it's so true. Like, when you hear someone's story and you put yourself in their shoes and you hear more of the context of their
Mhm.
situation, then that's truly where all of a sudden I can feel internally my own persuasion shifting in a way
Yeah.
or whatever
Mhm.
decision
Yeah,
making
exactly.
shifting. So, when it comes to case studies, what is some of the best ways to present that information to really be as persuasive as possible, but still get people to pay attention? I don't know. I don't know if you find this, but I feel like maybe that's people's hesitation sometimes with case studies, whether it's, yeah, the long
Yeah.
website story or even a podcast interview. They're like, but will people read this? Will people listen to it? You know what I'm trying to say?
Mhm. Yeah, you wanna make it something, obviously, that instantly resonates with that potential person. And this isn't necessarily going to be, like, your highest listen podcast. It might be if you do it really well, but it's not necessarily going to be your highest listened or your most downloaded or your most read blog or your most clicked on email, but it is going to be the most influential. I can say that from the data that I have. So it's like you have to kind of understand the different roles that different types of content play in, your ecosystem. And yeah, it's not going to be your viral reel with like 100K, but it's going to be that reel that like the 100 people that need to see it are like, ooh, okay, I'm paying attention now. So
Mhm.
great results in your coaching offer, or whatever it might be. How, like, what client there can have a story that addresses that objection? So, an example like using authentic AI for entrepreneurs is like, you're obviously going to have the objection for people very clearly. That's like, well, Kinsey, I've never used AI before. Will I be able to figure this out? That's always, we're always going to have those people who are like, I've never done this before. Can I do it from scratch? Like, can I, develop it? So, you're obviously going to want to have a case study story that shows, like, hey, Jocelyn had never used AI before, and she came in and did XYZ and now creates all of her content, using AI tools in here to really help her get her brand voice and come up with ideas and do this. And now, what used to take her 10 hours a month to create now takes 2 hours. Like that type of story, because then other people who are like, oh, look, Jocelyn had never used AI and was able to figure it out, they're able to resonate with that. So, kind of always thinking about like, what is that purpose of that case study? What's that objection I need to address? Or what problem is my potential client running into that is keeping them stuck? And how can I show that, like, I have clients who have been in that same position who have been able to have success?
Oh, yes, and oh my gosh, I love that you use that example, and, you know what's so funny, Jocelyn? You are one of my favorite screenshots, which we'll talk about in a little bit, guys, because I go crazy for the screenshots from my students where they're like, "Yay, this is great," or whatever it is. But in one of my live workshops that you attended, you were like, "You turned me from an AI hater
Hater.
into someone realizing I can use this authentically," or something. I was like, this is the screenshot because that, like, captured a very specific objection that
Yeah.
is kind of hard to combat in a way. I was like, "Thank you, Jocelyn." So you, like,
Mhm.
totally gave me one of I love it. Um,
Love it.
yeah, but okay, so I love that so much, thinking about the specific objections and comparing that with then the specific results that people have actually seen from you. And also, this totally turns it around instead of I think that a lot of times the reason testimonials are so boring and don't necessarily convert very well, I mean, they are kind of showing social proof. Yeah, this brand is legit. But a lot of times testimonials are just like, "This was great,"
Yeah.
or the screenshot things that people do from their students is like, "This is a great course." But it just feels so surface level and it doesn't get to that deeper core stuff. So,
Yeah.
what are your recommendations for people who are trying to pick out specific problems or success things in just everyday life, but then also in the data and stuff?
Yeah. So when I work with my clients, what we do is we set up a case study collection system, and it starts from the moment they join. So there's typically, depending on whether you're like a coach or service provider and what your offer specifically is, if you are somebody that's helping with something very trackable like leads and sales, that's going to look a little bit different than a designer or something like that. So there's a couple nuances, but overall, what the system looks like is an onboarding form, a progress form, and then a case study collection form. And we're essentially reverse engineering the questions to ask on each of those forms to collect the stories. Because to your point, we don't just want this was great, because what's great to one person is totally subjective, right? I'm like, okay, is that person a beginner? Is that person super advanced? I can't tell how that's going to relate to me and like, give me any type of detail. So we want to be really granular in like the actual results that they experienced, even when it's something like intangible, a website design. We want to look at the transformation that they actually had. And more specifically, like we want to really look into your specific process, approach, methodology, frameworks, how you do things very specifically inside of your offer, because that's what separates you from not only everybody else that they're already considering, but that's what also helps communicate. Here's how this is different than what you've already tried or what you already know. So again, using authentic AI as a really great example of this is somebody's probably like, I've already tried Chat GPT, and they've gone in
Mhm.
there. This was me. I went into Chat GPT once and asked one question and it was bad stuff, came out of it.
Oh.
And I was like, I already tried it. It's so bad. So you want to be collecting specific insights from your clients around what part of my process inside Content Made Easy, for example, did you find really helpful? And then I would be, oh, it was these specific types of prompts, or the
Mhm.
fact that you had me trained ChatGPT on the brand voice first, right? Or something along those lines. And now when you go to tell those types of story, it's not just, oh, this was great. It's more specifically, I was getting really bad outputs from ChatGPT, but using your brand voice guidelines, I was able to train ChatGPT. And now they're like 95% of the way there. I just need to make some small tweaks, right? That's the type of very specific thing that gives like, oh, Kinsey's got something that I don't already know, that I haven't already tried, that isn't just the same as like, everything else that I've heard. And I need to get inside of that offer, that program, whatever it might be, to get that specific solution. So we want to get like very, very detailed in terms of like how your solutions are creating results, what types of results those are creating, what the end result is, and like how all of those little wins along the way contribute to that big result, and then how that ultimately transforms them beyond that result as well.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, I love everything you're saying so much, especially, because talking about authentic AI too, I'm
Yeah,
flipping
just
my
a little
hair,
commercial
guys.
here.
But, oh my gosh, and it's so funny too. You really do get such a different reaction when you get specific into the details and the storytelling. It's so funny when you're talking about that. Something that came up for me is I always, whenever I'm describing people's frustration with ChatGPT, I describe it in terms that I heard one of my students say one time, right? And I've used the same language. And I'm like, when you go into ChatGPT and you say, write me a social media caption, and it gives you back something that's crappy. So you're like, make it more friendly. And then it's overly friendly.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, and you feel like you're pulling teeth going back and forth and you wasted time feeling like you could have just done it faster if you'd done it yourself. That's what I
Hmm.
always say. And it's so funny because I'm talking that kind of story out and I am like, ooh, I could have just said, when you're frustrated with ChatGPT, like in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm thinking that. But I also see people's reactions. Usually I tell this on podcast interviews that I'm doing. So I can see their reactions and they're like, yeah, yeah, like
Yeah.
they get into it. And
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, yeah, this is like the power of storytelling and
Mm.
using experiences that your people have had and reflecting that back to them. And so
Mhm.
I nerd out about this so much, lady. And
Yeah.
also, can I just say, we love a system. I'm so excited that you have this system for gathering kind of case study
Mhm.
stuff. And I think it's so cool that you're making the questions better. That's one of those things that I think people get wrong so often when it comes to
Mm.
collecting testimonials. You could tweak the way you ask the questions just a little bit, and then the responses that you get back will be like 100 times better, don't you think?
Yes. Absolutely. And just like you said too, I call it a case study collection system, but I really should rename it to a client insight system or something like
Mhm.
that, because you're not just using those insights only in case studies. To your
Mhm.
point you just mentioned, when you ask like very specific questions on the onboarding form about what their frustrations are and what they're struggling with and that type of thing, that gives you literally the foundation for all of your content. And that's
Mhm.
something I support my clients with, is like how to pull out that data and like use it just the way you just described, because that's when we get so much more specific in our content, and we know that like specificity equals resonance, because they're like, oh, Kinsey's literally creeping on me and like talking to me as if she's like standing in my office watching me all day. And that gives this really deep sense of like, oh, Kinsey really understands me. And I want to work with the person who understands what I'm struggling with the most, right? Or where I'm getting most frustrated or things like that. So yeah, I love that you called it out. But yeah, just tweaking the questions is like it's my favorite part of the process actually, because that's where I get to use a little bit of my former journalism skills with my clients is like, teeing up the questions really well. But yeah, that makes all the difference in the types of insights that you get, both just data wise that you can use in any content, but also in the stories that you're able to tell from a case study perspective and not needing to like follow up with your clients or even needing to do an interview. Cause I like for you to be able to sit down, pull up your collection system and have everything you need right there. And like, if and when you do interviews, that's like a bonus, but you shouldn't need to do an 30 to 60-minute interview just to get the insights you need. It should be ready to go in your, collection system so that you can sit down and literally create case studies every single week.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about collecting then, because I love what you're kind of saying about, well, this isn't just a token testimonial questionnaire. It sounds
Yeah.
like you're integrating it into the onboarding and all the
Mhm.
things, which I love. And then another thing too is that I feel like that's a lot of people's hesitation. People are scared to ask for testimonials or scared to ask clients for insights that they could
Mhm.
turn into case studies. So tell us a little bit more about that. And if you have any mindset shifts for getting over
Yes.
the fear of it.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to actually be scared myself, which was funny because I literally, from my very first client in 2015, I have used case studies with every single client because I was like, this is how, as a content person creating content for a brand, I can get the best insights is by gathering case studies and understanding who like the best clients are for this offer. But then when I started my own business, it was like, ooh, like, what if they're not getting results? I don't want to
Mhm.
shine a light on that, right? But then I did like a lot of work around that. And what I really realized, I was like, I can't improve my offer. I can't support them better if I don't know what progress they're making. If I don't know whether or not they're getting results, I can't possibly do my job and best support them and design my offer to achieve a specific result if I'm not tracking it in any way. So I just was like, there's two parts to it. So I was just like, you know what? The worst case scenario is all my clients tell me they're not getting results, right? And I was like, if somebody told me they weren't getting results, I do know how to figure that out. It might be a little bit messy at first, but I was like, at the time this was my podcast agency. I was like, if they aren't converting on their podcast, I do know how to like figure out, okay, well, are they actually publishing consistently? If they are they publishing the right types of content? If they are, like, are they also like, doing XYZ? I was like, I can really kind of do an audit and figure out like where that gap is.
Mhm.
So I just reminded myself of that. I was like, I'm smart and I can figure it out. Um, and then, of course, I surprised myself and clients were getting results. But the other thing is like part of this system is I typically have some type of, depends on your particular offer, but for coaching offers and like retainer style services where you're really working deeply with people, is we have some type of ongoing incentive that is actually designed to help get them better results. So in my podcast agency, when I first rolled out my collection system, what it looked like was a monthly report, and clients would submit this report to me with what their sales were from their podcast. Because I could see their podcast stats, but I couldn't see how many leads did it generate, how many sales did it generate. So they would give me that data and then also tell me, like, what they feel was a big win of the month, asking some other specific case study questions. And then I also asked, like, where are you getting stuck? Is there anything that felt challenging about your podcast this month and creating your content? Is there, anywhere you have questions or things like that? And what I did was I collected that form and got the case study data for myself and the results for myself. But then they also were sharing, here's where I need support, here's where I'm getting a little stuck, or here's a question I have. And based on the data they provided in the form and what they were sharing, from their own perspective, I was able to provide a Loom video back to them every month with like, here's what to focus on, here's what to change, here's how to adjust. So this is like, I have 4 different collection styles, and that's one of them is like this monthly report. It's really good for those like higher ticket offers where you're like really working in depth with somebody. But there's that balance between they're giving you this data, but you're also providing something, again, just depending on the structure of your offer and what's appropriate for the price point, but you're offering something in return that's designed to help them like move through those challenges and things. So it's an opportunity for you to close any gaps that, might be off in the curriculum or, just like somebody just needs that extra like personalization or whatever it might be. And then that creates a really nice win-win where your clients are like, oh, I know if I share this information, I also get something out of it. And then I feel good because I'm like, oh, I know that like when they share this, there's an opportunity for me to improve in some way. And just kind of taking that like I'm always improving mentality so that it doesn't feel scary. It's like my offer can always be better. I can always get results faster. I can always make it easier. I can always make it simpler. And having just like that mentality rather than like, oh, my offer has to be perfect today, type of thing.
Mhm. Ooh, I love that so much, and I love the give and take style of that too. That feels so much better immediately, and continuing to nurture your clients. It's so funny. All of these mindset things, usually there's just a little flip that you need to make in your
Mhm.
mind, and all of a sudden it
Yeah.
makes way more sense and feels so much better. Okay, I wanted to ask you real quick about measuring success and measuring results because this is something that I've always had trouble wrapping my mind around for some reason. Okay, firstly, I've never been a stats person. I love my data people because you help me not have to worry about the
Mhm.
stats as much. And so I think that sometimes I have trouble looking for like the tangible results because I so much want to lean into the feelings of things. Although
Yeah.
I will say when I actually sat down and did the math for how much time I'm saving with AI, I was like, "Holy crap, this is amazing." But
Mhm.
anyway, tell us, like, how do you help clients find those tangible results that the people care about in the case studies?
Yes. I don't wanna discredit feelings because actually so many people miss the feeling part of things.
Okay.
Like, "This feels so easy," or "This feels so aligned for me," or things like that, and they actually tend to it's funny because a lot of people tend to overshare just, like, the hard result without any of the softer emotional pieces of it. It's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
they made 10K." It's like, "Okay, well, what did that 10K do for them? How did they
Mhm.
feel? How did that change, their life?" Or whatever it might be.
Mm.
So don't stop sharing the emotional wins with
Okay.
that. But depending on your offer, not every offer has a metric to, track. Some do, obviously. A lot of B2B stuff does. If you're a YouTube coach, you might be tracking subscribers or leads generated or something like that, depending on your client. So if you have a specific metric like leads, sales, subscribers, that's obviously going to be a little bit easier to track because you can literally collect that on their onboarding form and then track that progress throughout their time in your offer. But for something you can see where it's okay, it's not like they're going to pull up Toggle and literally track their time for you to
Yeah.
calculate exactly what that is like we kind of have to kind of get them to just like reflect on that process of using AI and like how easy it was for them. So your offer like in the AI world, that side of your business, I would consider that what I call like an implementation style goal, which is like how fast were people able to set up their, for example, like content made easy system? How
Mhm.
fast were they able to go and like actually train ChatGPT on their brand voice and get that done? So you can show, hey, this isn't some big complex thing that takes like weeks to train and weeks to set up. It's like,
Mhm.
I got my brand voice done in 30 minutes. I'm using my content, plan for the first time this month. And I was actually able to come up with 20 reels ideas in, 15 minutes or
Yeah.
20 reel scripts in an hour or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. So you can have them kind of estimate what they are feeling. So you can really show like kind of on both sides, the initial setup side for you and like how quickly that is moving. And that's a little bit more tangible. And then on the output side, when they're using that on an ongoing basis, like how much is that actually like taking me to, create that content now? And kind of comparing, contrasting that to kind of what they were frustrated with or stuck on and things like that prior to joining your offer. So again, not every offer, most offers have something a bit tangible like that, like time saved or something, but it's not always going to be like the most accurate. So we just kind of have to kind of put that verbiage like, this client estimates that they, did this in 2 hours or that they saved 5 hours or something, so that there's that little context around of like it being an estimate or something like that. Unless
Yeah.
maybe I'll specifically track it for you now and be like, I saved exactly this amount of
Girl,
time.
let me know because also, okay, I think AI is so crazy and awesome and new or frustrating or whatever, but it's so funny the results that people don't even realize they're getting. I think even I usually use my own results if we're honest because I can track myself, thankfully. But, when I added up the time I was saving on average every day, month, week,
Mhm.
I was like, holy crap, really? I didn't even realize this. And then when I
Yeah.
was doing my 2024 reflection, I was like, wow, Kins, you did a lot over this past year. Like, you did, like, in the moment, I didn't realize it. And then the other day, too, I was like, holy crap, my mindset has been so much better on the daily using AI. And let's be honest, I use it as my therapist a lot. Just for those little daily trigger moments where you're like, ugh, this is going to distract me for the next hour. Let me rant about it to ChatGPT. Okay, cool. We're good, And but
Mhm.
I put it on my Instagram stories, and I don't think people really have gotten to that point where they realize yet, wait, not only is this saving me time, helping me do more work, giving me more freedom to enjoy my life, but also that's all adding up to kind of me feeling like I have a healthier mindset
Mhm.
on average on the day to day. Although we
Mhm.
are comparing that with the current state of the world right now. So, like,
Yeah.
maybe that's it too, for sure. But yeah, so interesting. And I never thought about implementation time as a
Mhm.
concrete success
Yeah.
measure too, but that's something I will talk about more for sure. Okay, last question. And I warned you that I was gonna bring this up,
Yeah.
girl, because you know me with my courses, with my workshops, I love those screenshots, right? I have students in my live courses commenting, like your comment, you turned me from an AI hater into whatever. And I have students kind of messaging me sometimes, oh my gosh, I love this reel or this helped me. And then I get this email from my lovely friend Jocelyn one day, guys, and she's like, guys, don't use screenshots. And I looked at my sales page and I had like 15 screenshots. My students on there I was like, Jocelyn, help. What am I
Yeah.
doing? So tell us your take on screenshots and what we should do.
Yeah. I'm not anti-screenshot. There's a couple kind of nuances that go with this. So, I am anti sharing a screenshot that has a specific result, and typically we see this, like, mostly with, like, money related results where it's like, "I made 10K in 5 minutes." And we get, like, that screenshot, and it's like, "Great." There is no context to who this person was, like, how big their audience was. Was that literally they had a 10K offer, so they sold one person, or is that like a $100 offer to 100 people? Like there is zero context around that, and that just can come across very manipulative unintentionally. Like literally, I don't know anybody who's like intentionally trying to manipulate, but it just comes across a little bit manipulative because you're not providing the context on the work they did to get there. Like they might have said this was in 5 minutes, but they've been working on this for 9 months in your program and just hit publish on the campaign or launch that they're doing, so it's
Mhm.
5 minutes after 9 months of work. Like there's just so much missing from that. So those types of screenshots I don't like unless you include them in the case study that provides the full context. And then you're just adding that in as kind of that extra social proof of here's literally what the client said in their own words. But then so that's just like one thing to be mindful of. If
Mhm.
you're using like any type of like result, like number, metric, especially, like just provide the context
Context.
around that, who they were, the actual time frame, the work that went into it, and like don't make it feel it's this overnight 5 minute type thing. Then when it comes to screenshots of testimonials and things like that, what Kinsey's talking about is I had this email that was like, your wall of screenshots is like costing you the sale because essentially what's happening is like, I see this across so many sales pages. They just list out all these screenshots in like one place, but it's so challenging even just to like read.
Mhm.
So I want to see the screenshots integrated around that client's results or where it would be like, okay, here's Jocelyn's story. And then like, here's a screenshot or two from Jocelyn. But again, there's like context and that makes it a little bit more skimmable. And I can be like, oh, okay, I relate to that person's story. I skim the headline. I'm like, cool. I want to keep reading. I read the paragraph. Awesome. Then I see the screenshots and I get the full 360 of like who this person is, all their stuff. And like, it's so much easier to skim than like that wall of like screenshots where it's like, I don't even know where to look and that type of thing. So I typically recommend avoiding that just wall of screenshots. Now, the one exception I would say to that would be like if you make that wall of screenshots themed in a very specific way. So if you Kinsey like had a section that specifically said, here's all the people that went from AI haters to realizing they could use it authentically. And you had like, 10 that kind of fit that theme. And obviously, like mine specifically stating that, but also other people's being like, oh, yeah, like I never thought I would love AI, but I'm actually realizing like it's so helpful. You could then have that theme, and that makes it a lot easier to skim like that way. And then, same thing for coaches. You could have a section that talks about more you as a coach and how I loved that they didn't fit me into a one size fits all box, right? Or something like that. So that's like a really great way to get what people are saying, like outside of the result about your softer skills as a coach or a service provider, but kind of theming those out so that they're more digestible and we understand what we're looking at. Does that make sense,
Yes.
Kinsey?
Totally. I am so glad that I asked you that question. And I know some of my listeners are going to find this helpful too, because I love what you said. Okay. Firstly, when you were talking about context with screenshots and stuff, it totally made sense to me because I'm like, I add these screenshots to my sales pages and I know the student and I
Mhm.
know their story behind. And so, like, as I'm adding them, I'm like, oh my gosh, Michelle, I loved her. Okay. Oh my gosh, Joss, great. And like, I know your guys' entire story. And I'm like, people are going to, like, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, the people who see these are going to love these. These are great. But like, so first thing I'm going to do is go and try to look at my sales page objectively and like read the screenshots and take myself away from the student and be like, oh, what would I think of this? Love, love, love the themed screenshots idea. I think I'm gonna try to do that moving forward too. Because for sure I know exactly what you're talking about. Actually, now that you said that, my wall, I actually tend to spread my screenshots out through my sales page. So
Mhm.
like the first testimonial section that you hit is 3 testimonial screenshots kind of thing. And then a little down the page, I'll do 10 in one
Uh-huh.
section and then
Mhm.
I'll maybe do 3 more, but it's not I've seen those sales pages where it's
It's like,
the wall, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, that feels
yeah.
way overwhelming," but I love the idea of theming it out, and also too, yeah, remembering that the context to one screenshot may actually be way more powerful for making that conversion than, yeah, that just wall of testimonials, but
Yeah.
the last thing I wanted to say, did you need to hop off at a hard time
No.
cutoff of 2? Okay, well, I just wanted to check because we had a gabbing session, in the beginning, and I was like, "Oh, shoot, it's 2."
No, we're good.
Okay, we're about to wrap it up, but wait, what was I gonna say now? I'm forgetting now. Do you remember what trail of thought I was on at all?
We were on screenshots, theming them.
Theming
You you
I
have
forgot.
shorter screenshot sections.
Yeah, it's okay. Whatever I was gonna say, it'll come back in the universe at some point. It's fine. But anyway, I love that so much, Jocelyn. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I love the tangible things that we can maybe start thinking about and putting into action with all this jazz. I know everyone is going to want to connect with you and find all of your resources. So, can you please share all of those with us?
Yeah, you can find me most active on Threads at with my handle at Scale Your Resonance. And then I'm very active like to my email list as well. And you can get on that by going to scaleyourresonance.com/class. And you'll be able to opt into my free micro class, which is about a 35-minute training where I go over the 4 different types of client stories that you can tell. So you can kind of get an idea of like, I think we think of case studies a lot of times as like just the big end result, but there's so many other stories that we need to be telling around our clients, like little progress and our solutions and things like that. So I go over those 4 different types. I share examples of a so-so case study versus one that has converted multiple clients and kind of bring you through what that whole process like looks like and what to be including in your case study strategy.
Yes. Ooh, I can't wait to check that out too. And thank you so much. This conversation has been so awesome.
Thank you so much for having me.